Hello, Rincon Valley families and staff. This is Tracy Smith, Superintendent, and this is a presentation on our district budget for the winter 2020. Tell you a little bit about our revenues. Where do our funds come from? Rincon Valley receives funding from three sources: local, taxes and foundations, state, and federal. Here is our general fund revenue, almost a $41 million budget. Most of our money is that big blue piece of the pie, $30 million from what's called LCFF, or Local Control Funding Formula. The federal money, as you can see, is just a little tiny sliver of the pie, and other local includes the bond, and also mostly is from the parcel tax as well, and then the other state revenues as well here. Local Control Funding Formula is presented here in this graphic. It began in 2013 when California dramatically shifted the way it gives money to schools, and it established a funding system based on the intent of equity. So students with higher needs, low income learning English, foster youth, receive more funds per pupil in order to meet their needs. So you start with the base grant, so that's every student generates a base grant, and that as amount is around $9,000 per student currently in the state of California. And then there's supplemental grants based on how many students who fit into those categories. If you have over 20% in those categories, you receive what's called supplemental dollars. And then finally, if you have a very high need students of at least 55% of your district, then you are eligible for what's called concentration grants. And the concentration grants are on top of the supplemental grants. This is why you see different districts funded at different levels, all based on their demographics. The local control accountability also came into effect in 2013 as a companion to LCFF, and it is used to outline the spending of the district. It is a state requirement, and one of its biggest requirements is to make sure that we get stakeholder input about how to spend our dollars, especially in the area of those supplemental dollars, and how best to serve the needs of our most needy students. So the state requires that plan. We are in the middle of starting our stakeholder meetings that are at the different sites, and we take that input and write it up in April and May, and then we have a hearing of the board for the LCAP and the budget, the first meeting in June. And the final approval of both the LCAP and the budget for the following year is approved at the second meeting in June. Our district has participated in a program and received funding through something called Basic Aid Supplemental. This is a niche funding that the district currently qualifies for, and it's estimated to be about $3 million annually. Since the district began receiving these funds in 2009, the money has been transferred to programs that could be seen and used more for one-time uses, or for student programs that could possibly go away and the core program for students would still exist. So biggest examples of the uses of those funds have been in the facilities program. The money has been used to enhance and augment what the bond has also been paying for. And the most recent example is we were able to create the new PE small group instruction program, which is in effect for the first time this year. The other local is the parcel tax. We thank our voters. Brings in approximately $1.2 million a year. It was originally a $96 a year parcel with a $3 per year increase. It was passed in November 8th on 2016. Seniors can be exempt from the parcel taxes. Ballots has requested money for music, library, and technology, and other educational expenditures, and it expires in 12 years. The Rincon Valley Education Fund is also a source of revenue for the district, and we thank all who have participated. This past year, the Rincon Valley had one of its more successful years and was able to donate $50,000 to the district to help support the Science Facilitator Program. The Bond Facilities Fund was Measure F, and it was passed in 2014. Once again, we thank our community for supporting our schools. We have fully expended this money at this point, and between this and the Basic Aid Supplemental, we have been managed to keep our roofing up to date. We've provided playgrounds, fields, tracks, solar panels, air conditioning units, lots of technology infrastructure in order to have strong bandwidth and capacity for projection in our classrooms, expanded music rooms, and also some new classrooms when we were able to do that. Lots of site work. On to expenditures. This is just a quick graph that shows how we where we spend our money. And then you can see where we took at the salaries and the benefits. It's between, according to this graph, this is just for the general fund, we're looking at 85% of our salaries are spent on people. Therefore, we are a people, serving people, business. That's what we do. That's the best way to serve people, is with people. RVUSD budget challenges. So the purpose of all of that background is to help understand what some of the challenges are facing our district and how some prioritization of how we spend our money will need to happen. So one of the biggest pieces that we are facing and challenging is that our enrollment continues to decline. And I'll show you some graphs in just a second about what that looks like. The costs of special education continue to rise. PERS and STIRS, these are the retirement programs for both our certificated and classified employment units. And they continue to climb. This started a few years ago, and the state asked the districts to put more and more contributions into these funds. We have a strong desire to compensate our employees competitively. And the funds from the state just recently in the governor's January budget look pretty flat, pretty stagnant. So no big gains or wins coming up from the future from the state. So it's just a reminder of how our state looks compared to the rest of the country. Here's Texas and California to the left, and Massachusetts and New York. Looks like they're getting close to double what we spend per pupil. Okay, here's our Rincon Valley Union School District enrollment, 2014-15, so about 6 years ago, our enrollment was at 3,632, and this year we are at 3,249. So that is a drop of roughly 424 students. The top line includes our middle school, the 7th and 8th graders, and the bottom line includes is just our elementary district. So when you apply that enrollment to our budget, you can see that we have a total loss now of $3.8 million of money for ongoing expenses. And some of this, of course, has been offset by different things that come from the state over the past years, other funds that have come from the state. But we have had to make some natural reductions due to this lower enrollment over the last few years. Every district is required to have reserves. I will tell you a little bit more about them. Our current reserve is around 15 to 16%. That's a healthy reserve. The average reserve for districts like ours is around 18 to 20%. However, the state requires a reserve of only 3%. But the best practice is to have your reserve a little bit higher. If you don't have adequate reserves, the district can be taken over by the state. I don't anticipate that happening, but it's important to recognize how they play into this how the reserves play into this budget picture. And just remember that reserves are not just about the amount of money, but that they are about time. So you just need to have a reserve that's strong enough to be able to react and plan just in case there is some type of an emergency. These reserves are by definition one-time funds, and if we are to use them as one-time funding, we will need to go back and restore those reserves. If we were to continue funding from the general fund as pictured before, this is what the graph looks like. You can see how much the impact is on the reserve bottom line. So in order to maintain a healthy reserve, we need to consider some different options for how we spend our dollars. So the question always comes up, which is a really good question, which is what do districts do to increase revenue instead of just thinking about having to make some priority decisions. Districts improve their marketing. Sometimes they deny students transfers out. And they also often create a magnet. It's been popular here in Sonoma County to create a magnet school of some sort to attract students from outside of the district or to keep the students from leaving the district. Increase attendance, so information to parents and incentives in order to get students to come to school as much as possible. There are always the options of passing another parcel tax as construction work slows down. There's also another chance to pass a bond at some point, and we can most definitely enhance the capacity of of school foundations and ours, which is the Rincon Valley Education Fund. So how does the reconfiguration decision fit into this? So this reconfiguration decision was in response to the budgetary needs that I just explained. And 2 or 3 years out, when we reconfigure these school sites, those savings in efficiencies that are created will be best spent for educational programs for kids. This is another question that comes up a lot, which is Oak Park. Could we sell that property? There are no plans to sell this property at this point in time. The property was purchased for long-term district use. As fiscal stewards of the district, we probably wouldn't consider selling it for maybe 10 to 15 years from now if we needed to. The value of the property at this time is not enough to solve any of our short or long-term problems. We will be creating a landing page on our website to help explain more about the Oak Park property purchase and begin discussions about how we could use it in the meantime. All right, budget prioritization. So how do we decide what our priorities are? This is the process, and we have begun this. The district administration gathers information on what options we have as cost-saving measures. We gather data about our different programmings through surveys, conversations, meetings to help understand what the priorities of the stakeholders are. The board uses criteria to help make these decisions. For example, they might choose a criteria that says keep it away from the classroom as much as possible. We are in a people business, so we just have to keep in mind that the majority of our funds go to salary and benefits. Therefore, as we will be having to think about that when we prioritize our funding. We are tightening our budgets in all departments, and facilities projects might need to go on hold until enrollment stabilizes. These are the big decisions that we are making. How can you help? Bring your child to school every day unless they're sick. We've had a lot of sickness lately. However, planning vacations, trips around school hours and days would be very, very helpful. Every increase in attendance rates and percentages increase the funding for the district. And finally, think about getting involved with the Rincon Valley Education Fund. Consider a donation. Consider being involved. The majority of their fundraising efforts goes directly to support programs in schools. We want your questions and comments. Here is a website to go to leave comments and questions, and we will do our best to get back to you. Thank you.